What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. Mr. Fitzgerald, how you doing today? We're not talking about the weather. You told me last time. I'm not bringing it up. What's going on in LAF today?
I'm not going to lie. I thought it was coming up. And you kind of did just bring it up right
no,
there.
I didn't bring it up. I didn't bring it up at all. I just said we're not talking about it. What's going on in LAF?
Oh, man, a lot of good things. This morning I had I did a little presentation at a real estate agent's office here on Long Island, and it was funny, man. The more you, and I'm learning this the longer I'm in the industry, but like the more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities seem to like gravitate towards you, you know? And I gave this speech to just about kind of like the state of the market, the insurance market in this coastal area that we live in. And at the end of the meeting, someone pulled me aside, and this is just talking about homeowners insurance and property specifically. And at the end of the meeting, someone pulled me aside and said, hey, you know, I'm on the board of this condo association. It's 187 units right on the water. You think you could come in and talk to the board and, you know, see if you could help us out with the insurance? And I was like, woo, I wasn't expecting that type of opportunity, you know? And who knows if I'll write it or not, but, you know, it kind of just goes to the point as what I was saying before is, man, you put yourself out there and good things will come, you know?
Continue to show up. We talked about it, last week with Maverick, especially when we talked with Maverick there, and he was talking about how focused he is on the local play, and we talked about how that's a long game. You got to continue to show up because you never know who's going to know who, or whose cousin owns this building or this business or whatever. So, yeah, it's good. I know the Realtor event was something you were looking forward to, so I'm glad it went well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a great episode for you today. I've connected with this gentleman recently over the last couple of weeks and really excited to have him on. It's a scratch agent himself, so we're really excited to welcome Michael Cruz, who is the owner of Foresight Insurance, calling in from Maryland today. Mike, how are you today, sir? Thanks for joining us.
I am doing great. Great to be chatting with you guys today.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to join us, and why don't you just give us the introduction to Mike? If anybody's meeting you for the first time here on the podcast, tell us a little bit about your story, and then we'll dive into the insurance fund.
Absolutely. My name is Michael Cruz. I'm originally from Cuba. I got to the U.S. in 2001, was raised by a single mom, and I've been in the insurance industry pretty much most of my working life. I started in 2008 with the life insurance industry. And 2011, I got recruited into Liberty Mutual, where I got introduced into the P&C world. What a hidden treasure. I had no idea, what an amazing industry this was. And during that time, kind of Erie had an itch where they were recruiting a lot of Liberty agents. So a lot of agents would stay at Liberty for 3 to 5 years and kind of branch out and start their own agency. So that's exactly what I did. In July 2016, I launched my own scratch agency with Erie.
Okay.
And you started in 2008. So, I mean, talk to me about that. That must have been a hell of a time to get into the insurance space with everything going on with the housing crisis.
Yeah. Well, at the time, I was 19, and, just my fear of influence was not interested in talking about life insurance.
Yeah.
But, I learned rejection. I learned about prospecting and just really growing a thick skin, which I feel like that's something that our industry needs. Like in the P&C business, like a lot of stuff comes to us, and we don't really have the hunter mentality, which I feel like if we did, we can really take this industry to a new level. So it really taught me that.
Yeah. And tell me what you liked about the insurance industry that you were like, after a couple of years, you're like, you know what, I can do this for the rest of my life. Like what really drew you to it?
I've never really been in love with the industry per se, oh my God, this is my passion. But, and I've had this conversation with myself many times, right? If I had to do something else, I really don't have something else that I'm extremely passionate about that I would want to, stop doing this. But it provides me the ability, the lifestyle that it provides me, the flexibility, the freedom, and really the upward mobility where, if you really want to grow, if you want to become an expert at it, you can do really well. And we know many agents that have retired in their 50s. So that's really appealing to me. That's been mainly the things that I liked about it.
Okay. And now what made you go out? So you're at Liberty, right? Then you get recruited, you said by Erie. And
by
then
Erie.
When you're with Erie, what made you decide to go out and open up your own?
I was naive, man. I thought I knew better. I had a pretty good deal at Liberty. Now that I look back, I probably worked the hardest when I started my own agency that I've ever worked in my life. for less pay. You know, which I'm in hindsight, I'm really glad that I was naive, because, you know, I'm really happy with the decision. But it was, if I knew everything that I knew right now, I think it would be very difficult for me to say, hey, let me go and do that, because of how difficult it is in those first few years.
Yeah, you know, that's such a good point, because I was just talking with another agent about this the other day, and how, you know, if you knew how hard it really was before you did it, would you do it again? You know? And I was talking to this other agent about it, and he said, man, you know, starting a scratch agency, he's like, it's like you're in a rocket ship, you take off, you crash to the ground, the rocket explodes into a million pieces, you got to pick it all up, put the rocket back together, then take off again, and then it crashes again, and then you got to, and he's like, that's how it is building a scratch agency. Like, you're just going up, down, up, down, up, down. It's an emotional roller coaster. And God, with Steven, we talked about this on the last 3 episodes now, just like how hard the journey is. But I like what you said about just being naive and like opening up the agency, because
it's very humbling.
To be honest with you, I agree 100%.
It's very humbling, because you think you know all these things, and you believe in yourself, and you know, and it's great to have that. And I feel like sometimes you need a little bit of that naive, ignorant enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
But it really teaches you about life, you know, because you realize, like, it's not as tough as it seems, and it's not as great as it seems. So just being consistent with your emotions. Like, sometimes I feel like, man, we hit a stride. Me and my team, we got this. We're doing so many great things. We're doing so many things, and boom, there's a huge fire. That, like, how did this happen? How do we go from just killing it to like having this huge, you know, challenge? So it's really humbling to go through that up and down emotions, and it really builds your character. And I think I've grown more as a person in the last 5-6 years since I've had my agency, because of my agency, you know, because otherwise you're not really challenged in the industry.
Well, I think it forces you to grow more as a person, especially if you start off as a one-man show. There's nobody else to do it. There's nobody else to do the tasks that you want to do. There's nobody else to continue to go through the motions to make sure you can get to the next step. I think it forces you to, you know, and then puts you in uncomfortable situations that maybe if you were working at an agency as a producer, or working at a larger company or whatever it was, you could maybe hide throughout those things. But when you're a scratch, you know, guy or gal that's just starting from nothing, you're doing everything, and it's the teaching lessons. I mean, just for me, 10 months is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can, you know, when you're in a big company, you can say, well, it's the system, or, you know, they're not doing it right. But you as the boss, now it falls on you. So if something's not working, you know, like, you got to take ownership for what's going on, you know?
Yeah, everything's your fault. Mike, talk to me about the beginning stages of Foresight. Like, when you first opened, what did that whole process look like? Was it just you by yourself? Did you have somebody with you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I had an interesting beginning. I kind of recruited a friend of mine to start with me as a non-licensed person, and he worked with me pretty much for like 3 years, and he was like the CSA. Eventually he got licensed. But that was a really good experience, because it really taught me about, you know, management and delegation. I had 2 part-time producers at some point, which I don't recommend part-time people. They don't have the time to learn the industry or to invest it. And it's a very, you know, it's a professional industry. It takes time to learn the underwriting guidelines and to build your pipeline and all that. So all those few years, like, it was just like trying and different things and seeing what works. So that's what I feel like the first year was. It's just like drinking from a fire hose and trying things.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was you and this one person. And then how did you grow from there? Like, how did you generate new business, and when did you realize it was time to expand and build the team a little bit more?
Yeah. So at Liberty, what the one thing that Liberty had right is that they taught you how to go hunt and how to build relationships. So instead of like finding individual clients, you go and find centers of influence, COIs, whether it's, you know, mortgage loan officers, realtors, CPAs, financial advisors, lawyers, because, you know, when you build one relationship, you can have that person send you, you know, 100 referrals in a year, versus a client might send you a few referrals. but eventually dries up because it's just not part of their process. So when I started, I started doing that. And, you know, it's a challenge. I feel like, especially with the realtors and the loan officers, you can become very transactional and very price driven, and you can attract, and it has taken me time to realize this now today, probably the last year or so. You really have to, you know, work with the right people. You know, sometimes when you kind of make exceptions and you just do whatever it takes to get the business, you're not really valued. And I feel like that's the problem right now with a lot of people in the industry. Like, you really it's better to have a few relationships that have a true relationship where, like, hey, talk to my friend, you know, my friend Mike, he'll take care of you. You know, he's the insurance guy, versus like, hey, let's just get a quote. Let's see what the cheapest is, you know, find the cheapest. And it's just, you don't want to work with those type of clients or referral sources.
I just want to repeat something you said. Work with the right people. Like, that is, the team is out there, especially from like a referral partner standpoint, but also the clients that you're looking to work with. And we've talked about it a few times on the podcast of when you're scratch, you got to try to kill as much as you can to get money in the door and get that foundation set. And at the same time, like, look at what the risk is versus the reward. You know, you don't want to be chasing the minimum state policyholders that are shopping every single 6 months or whatever it is. And, you know your worth, right? As an independent, trusted advisor. I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Mike, at what point did you always have that feeling? Is that something you got from Liberty, or, you know, talk about what I just said in the development of Foresight? Was there the experience with you where you had an experience with one client where, like, I'm not dealing with anybody like this anymore? Or was it just something that you learned from your insurance background that you knew, when I open my agency, this is what this is my wheelhouse?
As far as like the referral sources, or
as far as yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place. I guess as far as the type of client you wanted to work with, like, what I just broke down there is what you said. Work with the right people. That and I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not just your mortgage officers and your realtors that you want to work with; it's the clients as well.
I think it's a maturity that you get to in a business where you see it enough, and you are the size that you are able to say no to certain things, right? Because I think the challenge at the beginning is, like, you need to make money. Like, it's really difficult. This business is very cash flow heavy at the beginning. Like, you need to invest so much money up front to make money. Like, we really make our money in the long term. So at the beginning, when you're, you know, the office expense, the employees that you're hiring is really cash flow heavy up front. So you're really on the negative end. So at the beginning, you're doing whatever you can to write business. But this level of maturity I've reached as of recently, because I'm tired of just dealing with the wrong people, right? And then you see it, right? So we'll start with the home, and then we're trying to get the auto later, and it's super hard to get the auto later. So if you're not getting that auto and that relationship up front, it's not easy. It's not easy. You think it's easy to just, when you have a huge monoline book of home to try to cross-sell, and it's very difficult. So, you know, just having those experiences of many years where, you know, you realize, like, you need to, in order to build a good book of business, it's all about the relationship, right? It starts with the referral source, then it starts with the client. I'm not saying we get it right every time. I feel like sometimes we break our own rule but, you know, at the beginning, now we're trying to have that conversation with the client and say, hey, like, we just don't want to be your home insurance agent. We want to be your insurance agent. You know, so just to answer your question, is basically, after seeing of many years of frustration, it's when I've had the maturity to realize, like, hey, this is the way to go. If you know, based on the type of business that I want to build, I don't want to build a transactional business anymore. I want to be more of a relationship based business.
Yeah. Yep. So let's continue to walk through the journey here. You have the one person that you brought on. You said you had, you know, that was service help. You had the few part-time people that you touched on there. You know, one thing that's interesting is, I told Shawn this the other day when we were talking, I'm looking at some point probably soon to bring on my first VA, or I'm still in between whether I'm going to do the VA route or go with just an in-house person. But that feeling for me automatically was like, oh, this is becoming a business. You know, because right now it's a business, but it's me and this 20 square foot office space, grinding it out. And, like you said, can break the rules every once in a while and do whatever. But when you bring on those people and it becomes a business and now you're responsible for putting food on their families' tables, walk us through that process of Foresight Insurance for you and, some struggles, some successes you found along the way with that.
Yeah, so I work with a person called Joe Hagan. He was kind of like the coach of Erie agents, and he's already retired. And his whole thing was, just basically delegating, like a factory, delegating tasks to the lower end, denominator. So like, if, you have he always in his setup, he had a non-licensed person and a licensed person, a CSR and a producer. And the goal was to delegate as much as you can to that non-licensed person because, you shouldn't be paying, $20 an hour for someone that should be doing work that's $10 an hour. So with that in mindset, I hire my first non-licensed person after those two individuals that didn't work out in April of 2019. And she was basically like a receptionist, not licensed. And I basically started a lot of the things that I was doing. I already had a list of things that I wanted them to do that didn't require a license. So even when I was, running the shop, like I already knew when I was putting my hat of a non-licensed person versus a licensed person. And yeah, so from the beginning, I've already had the mindset, like I didn't want to be a solo operator. Like I wanted to build a true business because I felt like that's how I truly was going to get the freedom that I wanted for my business. So that from the beginning, it's been just kind of systemizing the business and always kind of as I go, every process that I was doing, I was trying to think, all right, if I was somebody else was doing it, like what will be the process for them to do it? Because so a lot of times we have all this information here, but it's not really documented. There's no real process. So you start realizing where you start hiring people how unorganized you are. So
totally.
Don't take it hard on you. It's okay. It's part of the process. But just learn, right? So now you start getting organized. So now the mindset in my company is like everything we do has to be systemized. Nobody has the ability to just do whatever you want, right? Because that's not duplicatable. So from the way we take notes to the way we issue a policy to the way we do service. So that has been kind of the journey for us is how to become a systemized agency.
Mike, and how do you, that's awesome, by the way. That's like kind of what I'm going through right now, trying to systemize everything in a more efficient manner, so to speak. So how do you document your processes and procedures? Are they just on like a Google Doc in Google Drive? Are they on a Word document? Like, how do you do it? I'm curious.
I would say that's my weakness right now. I don't have an organized way of doing it. I've heard of people doing intranets. I just haven't had the time to build it. So right now what we do is we just kind of either record a video or do a Word document with like screenshots of what we want to do, or we write it out. I don't have like an intranet or something organized. That's okay. Unfortunately.
No, I spoke to Steven about this the other day, and here we go, Billy Williams again. Had a conversation with him, and I had this conversation. I said, "Hey, what do you think's the best way to do this?" And he's like, "Shawn, don't overthink it." It's the first thing he always says to me because I always overthink everything. And he's like, "Set up a Google Drive, download your Loom videos that you created for training, upload it into a Google Drive folder. So now you could take your Google Docs, your Google Sheets, your Word documents, your videos, all onto the Google Drive. This way I can share the Google Drive with each member of my team. And now they don't have to go to the desktop to find that Word document, and then the Google Doc to find the other thing, and then the Google Sheet to find the other thing, and then the Loom website to find the other thing. They just go to Google Drive, and it's all in one spot, and it's free. I think we spoke about that on the last episode too, but that's something that's helped me, but that's like my focus now too, is I'm trying to build that out as much as I can.
Absolutely.
What do you want to say on that, Stephen?
No, I think it's everybody's going to have the process differently, and there's only so much you can do to set it up. So, because here I am talking about bringing on the first person, whether it's a VA or someone in house, and like I think I've done a decent job of trying to document everything, but I know I'm not anywhere near where I should be. But at the end of the day, you're never going to be where you should be until you're in it and know how it works. The specific staff person, the specific producer may like to get the information a different way, and like that, like I guess what I'm trying to say is like, don't stop and say, oh, I'm not going to release this process or this to the staff until it's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. And then next thing you know, it's going to be another 6 months, another year, another 5 years, and you're not going to have the process down because you've been waiting for it to be perfect.
Yeah,
100%.
And just to build on that real quick, the only reason I thought of the Google Drive thing with Billy is because I started noticing my team asking me, hey, where's that document? And then I would be like, oh, it's over here. And then Anna would ask me, where's that other thing? And I'd be like, oh, it's over there. And then, oh, this is over here. And then I realized, like, I'm just confusing everyone by having everything in all different spots. And like you said, Stephen, but if I never took that initial step, I wouldn't even have been here. So totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if I had to do it over, I would just record my screen. Like, just, let's say you're doing
It's the best.
Pull up Loom, just record that quote. Don't overthink it. I think the biggest challenge with the documenting is that you create this perfect process, and then when you actually go implement it, you realize there's like many different ways that this process can go, and you have to like constantly modify it, and that's okay. But I think that the recording of your screen is a game changer, and it's a huge time saver because you're basically just documenting as you go. You're not doing anything extra.
And you're going to be modifying everything, right? So to your point, Mike, don't wait to try to get something perfect, because it's going to be something that you continue to adapt. If you have a team of 3 people and then a team of 11 people, there's going to be a different process that you're going to have to add, right? So don't just hyper focus on this must be perfect to get that done.
Totally. And to kind of mention something else about that, right now we've been using a lot of video proposals, whether it's for sales or service, rewrites and stuff like that. And it's been a huge challenge for my team to implement that video proposal because they were like, oh my God, I messed up. I have to start over. And I've been trying to, coach them like, hey, it's okay. Like when you are on the phone and you make a mistake, you don't say, hey, let's start over this phone call, right?
Yeah.
You basically just correct yourself like, hey, I'm sorry. Actually, I didn't mean to do that. This is what I meant to do. And that video took you 3 minutes versus like you trying to type that email out. That's going to take you forever. And then you're proofreading, and then it'll take you 30 minutes to send out that email.
That's a great lesson right there. That's something I struggled with in the beginning. I'd go back, I messed up and said the wrong thing here. Like you said, treat it like a phone call. I really like that.
We had a client that we were switching from one company to another. We were trying to explain the whole bundle thing to that client. Like, hey, to add that specific coverage, we have to add this bundle. And it just didn't make sense in the email. So I just told my CSA, like, hey, just pull up the video. Show him like virtually like how it works. Like you see, you have to add this package, and then in order to get this coverage, this is where this coverage is on this package. And it took her 3 minutes, to do it.
I would love to know the amount of agents that use video proposals, because let me tell you, the amount of positive feedback I get from doing video proposals, I'm convinced less than 10% of agents are using it.
I don't think it's as many as you think. Yeah.
The hardest part is just getting the staff on board, man. It's it takes a lot of courage building, but once they actually do it, they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is a huge time saver.
Very true. Yeah, so Mike, I'm sorry. Let me go back real quick, just because I wanted to build off the centers of influence, if you don't mind, because that is a big way you generate new business. Can you run me through that process, just how you go about adding a new referral partner to your team? Because I think that can bring a lot of value to newer agents too.
All right, I'll give you a few ideas. Because I was with Liberty, I already had some relationships. But there's associations for, realtors, and there's associations for loan officers. I would say like get involved in those, go to those events. That'll be one quick way to kind of meet a bunch of them at the same time. The other way is like through your clients, that's one, Liberty and someone else taught me this, is like when someone is doing a refinance in your agency and the lender usually sends you the processor directly, the request, like start building your list. So when you get these refis, after you do the whole refi, you can go back to that office or make a phone call and say, hey, my name is Michael Cruz with Foresight Insurance. We actually just worked with a mutual client. We helped them with the insurance, and you did the loan. I just wanted to introduce myself. And then you can add them on the social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and then now you're connecting with them. But there is a mutual connection with that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Versus like if you're just cold calling these random people, like it's like if someone cold calls you, like you're gonna be hesitant to give them any, but you have that immediate trust because of the connection with the client. So that's like one way you can systematically add, centers of influence. I think there's a lot of times that we have we have the opportunities. You got to walk and chew gum at the same time. You really, a lot of people just think they have to go out of their way to find these opportunities. No, you just have to keep your eyes open and be smart about it. But, networking through your own clients, asking, hey, you just bought the house, who was your realtor? I would love to meet them. And then you reach out to them and you say, hey, my name is Michael Cruz. I'm just reaching out because from time to time, people might ask me for a referral. I want to make sure that I match them with someone geographically and demographically. Would love to see if we can grab some coffee sometime and talk business. And that was how I built my relationships before to this day.
Nice. Mike, if you don't mind me asking, ballpark, how many referral partners do you think you have? I'm just curious.
So I would say it's like a list of 10 that probably send us consistent business. And then there's probably like another 10 that, don't really use us every single time.
Yeah.
Right now, my biggest mission is like, I want to get more realtors, and I want to train realtors. And my whole pitch to the realtors is like, hey, you got a system already for everything in the whole transaction process, but insurance. You're telling your client, hey, go find insurance with the auto insurance company. But what you don't realize you're doing is that you're losing control of that part of the transaction. So by you working with the same insurance agent, now your processor and your lender work with the same agent. The date can change, they can communicate directly. You don't have to call a 1-800 number like Geico to get you a deck page or change the effective date. So I feel like that's my next goal now. It's like to just try to recruit as many realtors as I can, because in my experience, the realtors are more relationship based. The referrals from the lenders more transactional based. Sometimes you need both, but I think if you can just focus on the realtors, those are the ones you're going to have the conversation. So what I'm trying to train the realtors is like, hey, the minute you get a ratified contract, send the email with the quote request, because then we can also help your loan officer know exactly how much the insurance is going to be, and also like we can see claims. If there's any claims on that property, we can bring it up to you so you can have more negotiating power that you might want to ask more questions.
I got to say, you just completely shifted my train of thought. So everybody that's listening, rewind that right back and listen to that again, because I have always preached, which is a true statement, the mortgage people need us to finish their job, which they do. The mortgage people need the insurance binder. They need the insurance done in order to complete their job and get paid. So I've always poured into the mortgage people. But when you look at the realtors that way, I mean, that's brilliant. I love that idea. Write that crap down right there. That is good stuff, Mike. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing, Shawn, I can't remember who was the guest that talked about this, but they talked about how once a year they'll always reach out to their top 10% clients as well and just say, hey, Mr. Smith, I really enjoy working with you. You're exactly the type of client that I want. Yeah. And, that's another, the last couple episodes unintentionally, we've kind of talked about treating referral partners and clients the same, right? And then that's another great way to do it is, Mr. Smith, you're my ideal client. I really appreciate your business. We were able to do X, Y, and Z for you. Is there anybody in your circle that you think would benefit from our services? Because you are the type of person we want to work with. And from their standpoint, they're going to, wow, he took the time to call me and tell me I'm one of his best clients. You know what I mean? Like they're going to make you feel good. And then from their standpoint, if they're introducing you and you're providing a good service, then that's making them look good. So I think it's just interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about the last couple episodes. We talked about referral partners and how the communications and the actions from us as agents are kind of the same when it comes to referral partners and comes with dealing, with the clientele that we want to work with.
I think it's you really have to build your calendar, and I think we're all, I don't know, I think Shawn, you're part of the Billy Williams program. It's just that whole calendar blocking, just like you calendar block for other things, like calendar block to prospect. And network with people, so put in your calendar, hey, I want to have 2 to 3 coffee meetings with potential referral sources every week, and you fill it up, every week. So if you consistently do that, you'll never have to, find business. Business will find you.
I like that.
I started doing that for 23 was just have one coffee a week with somebody you've never met before. Somebody in, your BNI group or that's new, or somebody you met at a chamber, and to your same point, like even if those people don't become your client, which not everyone is, obviously, right? They may know somebody who needs your service down the road. So like that's completely a good point about building building those circles of influences.
And as I mentioned with the hunter mentality, unfortunately, our PNC industry doesn't have that. And that's something that I want to, mention. Like, we should all have that hunter mentality, because what we do, everybody needs. So when you go in with that mindset, what I tell my agents is, like, don't be a secret agent. Like, if your friends and family and your Facebook, don't know that you do insurance, like, that's a huge missed opportunity. So I feel like a lot of people just don't talk about it enough. When you go have dinner,
Mike, tell me what the hunter mentality means to you.
The hunter mentality means to me is that just always, so a few things. So on my everyday life, I want people that I bump into to know what I do. I'm not trying to ask you for your business. I just want you to know what I do. I need to be proactively, prospecting, so not just kind of waiting for things to happen for me. And there was something else that I wanted to say that I forgot. Oh yeah. So social media, I feel like that's a huge missed opportunity. I think it was like David Carruthers put up a quick reel saying, like, people will invest 3 hours to go to a networking event and meet 20 people when they're not really putting up content that's going to, you're going to be able to show it to 2,000, 3,000 people in your network. And I'm like, my mind got blown, because I'm like, man, that is so true. Like, a lot of my producers is not using social media to promote themselves. And like what you're doing right now, Steven, with the whole, educational content, I feel like it's gold, man. That is the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's dive a little deeper here, because we talked a lot about starting the agency, your sales strategy, the hunter mentality, which I love. Let's look at the agency now. Let's take that hood up. What does it look like? What's the staff lineup? Are you utilizing VAs? The producer lineup? Let's talk a little bit about Foresight today.
Sure. So Foresight today, we have 2 service agents that are licensed. We have 3 sales agents. 2 are personal lines. 1 is commercial. And it's myself. And then I have 3 other VAs. 2 of them are, client facing. So when you call the agency, they're in the phone rotation. And then I have 1 VA is strictly for quoting, and some other, like, things like mortgagee changes, renewals, non-payment cancellations. That is like more like back office type of setup.
Might the client-facing VAs, are they U.S. based or overseas?
They're in Colombia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And then for your sales agents, do you have them prospect the similar way that you do by building centers of influence?
Yeah, so a lot of them, when they came in, I kind of like placed them with already established relationships that I had.
Gotcha.
But then I've also like taught them how to generate their own. So a lot of them have been able to build their own centers of influence.
Have your salespeople had insurance experience, or did you train them all from a pup?
Half and half. Some of them have come with experience. Some of them I've trained from scratch.
Now, I wrote that down, and I'm looking. So you got 2 service, 3 salespeople, 3 VAs. It seems like a well-oiled machine, right? That all seems to make sense. Walk us through kind of how you got to that setup. Like how does maybe talking about the client journey when that business comes in, because it seems like you got the VAs that are answering the phones. If they want to talk to Susie, they're going to go this way. If they want to buy, they're going this way. If they want to service, they're going this way. Break us through maybe that client journey, because I think that setup is very interesting and seems very intentional.
So when I started working with Joe, one of the processes that we worked on was the quoting process. His whole setup was basically, when someone calls for a quote, you provide the process to them. You to tell them what the expectation is. I'm going to gather your information. We're going to get off the phone. I'm going to quote it with various companies, and then I'm going to call you back with an offer with the best option that I found. So that was like a huge game changer for me, because I feel like a lot of agencies, you call and you ask for a quote and they just start gathering the information. There's no conversation of like what to expect. Some people think they're going to get a quote right away, like Geico. Some people don't know that you offer multiple lines of business or that you work with various companies. So we've, from the beginning, kind of like started working on it like 3 years ago, where we tell them what we do. We not only offer auto, we offer home from the beginning. So we kind of have a whole pitch when someone calls in before I get started on your quote.
So when I call in for a quote, I just think this is interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I call in for a quote, you're telling me everything that you do and how you can help.
Exactly.
Show me how that conversation looks like. I think that's
so
interesting.
hey Steven, thanks so much for calling. I first find out like, how did you hear about us? And after, hey, before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit more about our agency and what our process is. Is that okay? And that's when I kind of pivot into, who we are. We're Foresight Insurance. We're an independent insurance agency. We work with various insurance companies. In addition to auto, we do home and business and life insurance. Just wanted to explain what our process is. What I'm going to do right now is gather your information. We're going to get off the phone. I'm going to run it with various companies to try to find you the most competitive price and coverage. And then we're going to, sometimes what I tell them is I'll send you a video proposal. And then if you have any questions, you can call me back, or I'll just call him back and present over the phone. But that has been a game changer. I think what I added recently, about 3 months ago, is the pre-qualifying part. So now, before even asking about quoting information, I'm asking pre-qualifying questions. I want to know what insurance company you have. I want to know, what has you shopping? Is it price? Is it you're not happy with the service? Because then that tells you like what you need to overcome, right? What's the challenge? 90% is going to be price, right? But here and there is going to be a claim dissatisfaction or something like that. And then I want to know how much you're paying. And then I want to know like if you're having any claims, any moving violations. And, there's some fight back sometimes, like, why do I need to tell you all this? And I tell them like, look, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste our time. Based on what you're telling me is I know if we have a market for you or not, So, I would say like this year, we've probably been turning down a lot more people, who don't have prior insurance. For example, if you have no prior insurance, we're not trying to quote those, because what's happening is that they'll go to Geico. Geico will quote minimum limits, waive a bunch of things, and they'll write it, right? Yep. So what I tell them is like, look, I really don't have a good option for no prior insurance. I recommend checking with Geico or Progressive online. And after 6 months to a year, come to us. At that point, we'll have better options. Yep. Or like if you have more than 2 claims in the last 3 years, that's going to be a waste of our time. No carrier right now wants to write a policy with 2 claims or more. Like, it's not competitive. So nope. That's part of the process that we've been trying to do, is like pre-qualifying. So we're now wasting time quoting because we were quoting way too much before. Everyone that would call in.
So good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So let me ask this. Is it safe to say that the folks that push back on your questions, a majority of them do not become Foresight clients?
Correct. And I'm okay with that.
And that's why we do the pre-qualification, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I'm adding that tomorrow. That is, I love and I love the aspect of, if you get the pushback, is this is me doing my job, what you've called me to do, right? Is essentially what you're saying. And you're immediately adding value right away. That's the best part about that. You're immediately telling them, I'm here to listen to you. We're not just here to take your deck pages, run it through, and here's your apple-to-apple quote, and call us back if you want us to hit issue. That is.
There's so many things there. Even setting the expectation too, I think, is the easiest thing to do. Just say, hey, we have several different markets we go to. This is the process. This is how it looks. We're going to put an application together, send it out to our carriers, and we should have a quote back for you within 24 hours. Okay.
A lot of the things that we've implemented has been me listening to calls, and you're kind of like already overcoming the objections that they're going to ask you, right? So before, if we didn't tell the process, you would get to the end of the quote, they gather all the information. They're like, all right, what's my price? What is it going to be? And I'm like, oh no, I got to run it with different companies. And they're like, man, this is a huge waste of time. I thought I can get a quote right now, So that's why we explained the process.
Man, I got to touch mine up now.
That's good stuff right there. I mean, because that is what scratch agents need to hear. What do we talk about in the beginning of this podcast? Don't get into you got to write everything you get in the door, because, imagine if you're not setting that expectation. And I think, most of us are setting some sort of expectation of, here's we are, but Mike's got a very intentional checklist. This is what we do. We're going to ask you these next questions and see what direction we go with. And then when we decide what direction we're going with, we're going to set the expectations so that you know what's going to happen, right?
It's tough, man. It's tough, and it's tough to get the team to buy in on it, because you're turning down money. But as I look at my numbers, I see the quote activity, and I just felt like last year we were just quoting way too much. And I'm like, I'd rather quote less and quote better business, because what was happening is we're doing so many quotes, we're not following on the right quotes.
Yeah.
So if you're doing too many quotes, I was looking through the leads and I'm like, hey, you didn't call this one back. You didn't call that one back. And they're like, yeah, but I had 5 other quotes I was doing. So I'm like, all right, like we're quoting too much. So we need to figure out how to quote less so that we can follow up on the right quotes, because you do have to follow up, because a lot of people, insurance is not their priority. Sometimes they'll call you to start the whole process, but they get busy. Maybe they have to take the kids to soccer game. Maybe they have, school, work. Doesn't mean they're not interested. It's your job to bring that deal home because they're busy. So it's not their priority. So that's why, but you can't follow up if you're quoting 10, 15 people a day. It's just unrealistic,
No, and to build on that, I mean, the sales team might think that they're losing out money initially, but they're actually not. They're actually making more money because now they're getting both the home and the auto. It's probably a better client experience. They're probably getting more referrals from it.
Very relationship based because now you're not trying to rush them off the phone.
Exactly.
Here's the easy explanation for that from a management standpoint too, is that there's no doubt that the numbers and the studies have shown that the clients that aren't just worried about price are better clients. They're going to give you less headaches from a service standpoint. They're going to be easier to work with. You're going to enjoy working with them. So to sit down in your team, if you're listening to this and saying, "Man, I got to make a pivot to start to do this," here's the why. That's the why right there to get your team bought in. This is what it's going to do for us long term, right? And then those are the people that are going to be referring us business. Those are the people that are going to be screaming about us and saying that we're the place to go. I mean, that's a man, Mike. Thanks for sharing that. That was a good one. Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, Steven, we want to hit him with the last one.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap up on that note. Mike, as you said, you're a listener to the show, so you know what's coming here. But we ask everybody because I think that the answers are just an array of different answers, and it's really interesting to hear. But if you woke up tomorrow morning and you had to do it all over again, 0. I see you shaking your head, and you can't say you're not going to do it. You have to do it. If you wake up tomorrow morning from 0, what's something you would do differently or something you would focus on?
If it was today, I would tell you very simply, join InspireNation.org with Billy Williams. I mean, that is the Bible. This guy has created, man, that's like the foundation. Like you start there because everything else is noise. Like he has already mapped out the process. I mean, I'm still in the process of going through that whole system. It's very time consuming and you really have to dedicate time to it. But I'm telling you, man, if you're starting scratch, just go there, go through that process because every question you have, it's going to be there, and then everything else is, you're going to figure it out. But for the most part, like the system's already in place. You don't need to figure it out.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I will echo that because Shawn's been on with Billy and his team for a while now, and when Shawn and I first met, it was probably me. I was only a couple weeks into the journey, but anyways, when we got closer and stuff, I didn't get up going with Billy from Shawn's recommendation until I was about 6 months in, and I wish I did it right off the bat because you're right. There's so much in there that's good. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Mike. Thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate the support of the show and appreciate having you on, taking the time out of your busy schedule here to join us. For anybody that wants to dive into a little bit more, just reach out to you. What's the best way to follow along your journey or get in touch with you directly?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Michael Cruz. And my email is michael.cruz@foresighti.com.
Great, Mike. Thanks again for joining us. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.